Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Old Man. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, let's start off with Dan and Zoe. And in the aftermath of last episode, it's like, okay, so Dan's like, all right, here's the money. Here's the account. I'm sure you can divide by two. She's like, whoa, wait a minute. You said no at first, and now you're saying yes. And it's like, well, yes. I just had a conversation with Emily. She's doing something that's going to put her in danger, so I need to, that's why he's kind of flustered and just be like, right, I need to get this done, get this out of the way, because I need to track down Emily. I need to make sure she's okay, because she's putting herself in a very bad situation. So he explained some of the story to Zoe, and Zoe's like, okay, so that's what it's all about, because we find out in a flashback what this all comes down to, because they're interrogating the commander or whatever, or captain or whoever that they captured last episode, and now I don't know if that's supposed to be Faraz is the one doing the torturing, or whether his sister. I mean, his sister was covered in blood, so you'd assume she's the one. At least I believe that's his sister, if I'm not mistaken, doing all the heavy lifting in that interrogation. But, because he's the one that's in that room not covered in blood. She's covered in it, so. But the guy won't talk, and so it's like, but, once again, and a through line throughout this episode, all men break, eventually. So, but the moment it's like, okay, his wife is like, yeah, I kind of don't want, talking to Johnny, being like, yeah, I don't want that guy to talk. I was like, the moment she said that, I was like, wait, are you betraying your husband? And it's like, well, it's a lot more complex than that. It turns out that she is feeding information to people, but she's like, I'm not spying, on my husband, I'm spying for my husband. Basically, she's like, I'm asking the question, I'm getting an answer to a question I've asked for the past year that no one's giving me the answer to. Who will rule this land? Because eventually the Russians will lead. I know this, the Russians themselves know it, everyone else knows. So who's going to be there to kind of be in that power vacuum? And she wants her husband to be in that position. So she's trying to align everything so that he's in that position, which is like, wow. Okay. And it's like, right, that guy speaks your name about all that you've done. It won't just be you that gets killed, or your husband. He's like, Dan's like, I'm John. He's like, fuck, I might be dangling right next to you when this is all said and done. But it's like, right, just tell your husband. And she's like, well, I can't, because there's extra layers to this. Because she's like, there was a guy that spoke in a very foreign a language. She's like, he went to a house, I won't tell you where, in a valley I will not name, and this guy spoke a language they didn't understand and died on the front step, and they burned his body. And you're like, wait, what? And so it turns into this whole thing of, he gave them some information that the Russians also have access to. That there is a mineral deposit with so much, it's like copper loads, lithium, uranium. This is like the mother lode of mineral deposits. This is probably like the holy grail of some sort. Because the reason why he knows is because some Greek pirates were aware of it. But the fact is, the Russians don't know where it is. So they're looking for this information. She, on the other hand, knows where that is. And so it's like, oh, well, why don't you tell your husband? But for her, it's like, I need him to get to that position. I need him to be the person he is right now, and make that person be in his position of power. Giving him that much power that quickly, she's worried it will corrupt him. But it's like, no, that's not your husband. Johnny's like, that's not your husband. He's a good person. But she says, bringing that line back, all men break. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. If you get that much power that quickly, which begs it, because at first I was like, okay, so, because Johnny was saying that with that type of power, he could become the next president of Afghanistan. But it's like, you get that much power too quickly, it will corrupt you. So she needs her husband to be who he is now. Sadly, and they've talked about this last episode, that capturing that guy, Johnny, bringing, was it Polovich, to Faraz is what changed everything. It's like, yeah, and once again, it's like, yeah, that's what led to Dan and Abby having to do terrible things, monstrous things to kind of get away in the end. So now but now it's like, right, here she is sharing this secret. It's like, because Johnny's like, Jesus, lady, you put yourself in the most complicated situation where literally any misstep could end up with you dead. And it's like, yeah, but that's why she can't carry this alone. There's too much. So this is where her and, Johnny really started, like, deepening their relationship, because, like, right, they want what's best for Faraz, which means including lying to him and keeping certain information from him, because if information gets to his ear, it could change everything. Granted, based on what we hear, Faraz ended up changing even without that. But I'm sure the moment he changed, that information was probably even more reason not to tell him the truth. Because the question is, that agent must eventually speak, or they must have found a roundabout way to, like, either kill him and make it seem like his body gave out from the interrogation and stuff, or maybe Faraz did get the info. And I mean, because if either way, I think that plays thematically with everything too, that Dan and Abby had to do a lot of monstrous things to cover their tracks, to make her secrets never be known. And that's the thing everyone's doing. Like, this is some top level, like, espionage shit. Like, I mean, obviously, like, even more so, well, even then, even present day with everything. But it's like, that's the piece of information. 30 plus years later, this is what Faraz is after, those deposits. Because even in all this time, no one's found them. I'm like, that, because I thought Emily was that information. I was like, because it seems like, well, you'd assume Johnny knows. Well, Dan knows because Abby had to have told him. So I was like, but I was also thinking, like, because I assumed, I kept being like, oh, it's gotta be Emily, it's gotta be Emily. I never would have thought, it's like, no, it's specifically, this is the specific information he's been after this entire time. That's why he's been after it, like, because he probably figured, like, it's like, because that's why Harold was like, it doesn't make sense. Why now after all this time? His, Abby's long since dead. Like, why, it's been years, so why now? Like, either it just took him that long to finally find them, or is it because he believes that, well, if she knew, there's no way she didn't tell Johnny. And if not them, like, not unless Emily has, like, the information and she's not even aware of what she knows. So, but now it's like, right, this is what Faraz is after. Now Dan's filled Zoe in on everything. And Zoe's like, right, I don't think I'm built for this. And he's like, yeah, says the woman who just walked away with like half my money. She's like, yeah, but that was different. And I thought it was interesting because he's saying that basically she has a very unique superpower. He's like, either you're a CIA operative, you're an high-class operative pretending to be a normal divorcee civilian, or you're just someone with the superpower of being able to pick out people's weaknesses. Like, that is a superpower that he could use. And it's like, she's like, right, like, he needs her around for a multitude of reasons. One, keeping her around is the best way that he can keep her safe. Two, he kind of needs her in more ways than one, but also like the whole being able to see people's weakness thing. And she's like, would you need me to find out someone's weakness? And he hasn't fully. He needs to find out if something's broken. Is what he needs to know. And I'm like, I'm wondering if it's something about Emily. And maybe that's what he needs. Like, he needs Zoe to be around Emily to really get a sense of that weakness or not. And she's like, if you want me to, I can guess. And he was like, no. He's like, probably like, I don't need you to guess. I need you to know. So either it's a weakness in himself, Emily, I don't know. He ends up dropping off, was it Dave and Carol, the dogs, and then hands the slip, because it's like a pet hotel, and Marcia's name is at the bottom. So it's like, right, it's like, she's like, you're not planning on coming back from this. And it's like, right, I need you. He needed to know that Zoe could come pick up the dogs when the time came. She's like, it's kind of a lot to just throw ask someone to look after two dogs without really asking them. And it's like, well, you're the only person they know. Which makes me wonder, did Emily never even really know them either? I mean, I'm sure, like, after everything, they probably kept their distance. Like, I'm wondering, like, how long he's had those dogs. But it's like leaving them behind and stuff, because it's, I mean, I guess, I don't know if he would have been able to bring them on the plane anyway. But yeah, it's like he doesn't think he's coming back from this alive. And for him, it's like, yeah, I don't care what happens to me. My life doesn't matter. What matters is when this is all said and done, you and Emily will be okay. And that's what matters the most. That's all that really matters in this situation. And I think for him is also he kind of accepts it. Like, yeah, it kind of comes with the territory. Me being who I am, living the life I have. I think for him, it's like you always kind of expect, that things can always potentially end this way, but at least knowing that Zoe and Amy will be, I said Amy, I meant to say Emily, but I said Amy, the actress who plays Zoe's real name. I always mess myself up when I do that. But I also love the Zachary scene where he's like, all right, I try to ask nicely, so it's like, oh, she's like, well, you don't have to do that. Because basically she's like, if you go down this route, you're going to basically bust open that dam and you're never going to be able to close it again. Because that type of she's like, you didn't mean to, and I know you didn't mean to, but for one instant, when you thought I was a threat to Emily, you scared the shit out of me. Even if just for 1 second, you didn't mean to do that. I didn't even mean to put myself in a position where I'd make it be a threat to Emily, but you scared me. And it's like, but you're someone who does so much to kind of pull and rein that back in because you pop off. There's no putting that genie back in a bottle. So she's like, you don't even have to turn to that. Let me handle this. So, because I love him being like, yeah, you fucked this up. You fucked this up a little bit. He'll slam the door in your face. But you fucked this up a lot. And she was almost just like, really, motherfucker? And she's like, all right, challenge. And she goes out, steps a few steps towards Zachary's place, turns back around and is like, it's 11 o'clock at night. He's like, yeah? She's like, and I'm wearing this. Yeah. Isn't that going to seem weird? He's like, rich folks don't have to explain shit, And she kind of goes off. And I love that look on his face. Dan kind of smiles. It's like, I was like, you really like her. You already liked her. You liked her a lot before, but you really, really like her now. And she goes and talks to Zachary. And he's like, oh yeah, we'll talk about this. And she was kind of going to walk away, but then she was kind of like, once again, I love that everyone, her, Emily and Dan have got that very man, fuck that mentality. Knocks back on the door. I wasn't finished, Zachary, and I'm like, okay. And then she walks away accomplished. But in between, Abby she pops in here and there with Dan. And I love how they utilize that in this, because even in the flashbacks, it's him looking back, thinking back retrospectively. It's him as his younger self kind of reliving those memories to some extent. And Abby's there. And I think it's such an interesting aesthetic choice to always put her in the background out of focus. I think that, symbolizing that she's this ghost whispering that he's keeping, because she even says later on, I'm your prisoner. You're basically keeping me here because almost like his refusal to let her go. It's like, I can't be the person you confess everything to. You have to find someone who, I can't be that person to forgive you. You have to find that person. They have to choose it. And that was something she was kind of saying about Zoe, that Zoe, the difference between her and Zoe is Zoe has a choice. And I think maybe for Abby, she the circumstances that brought them together to put them where they were, it's that was kind of beyond our control. Our choices led us there, but eventually it was no longer kind of a choice. It's just kind of do or die survival. So at least that's how I'm interpreting that. So, but I thought it was interesting that how does she right, the way she explained it with the whole Zachary thing was when he saw Dan, he saw an old man trying to tell him how to do his job, so that's why he responded the way he did. And she's like, I'm not quite sure what he saw when he saw me, but kind of doesn't matter. But I saw that weakness and I took advantage of it. So, and Dan's just like, yeah, but that's cool and everything. Glad that everything worked out, but you do that to the wrong person, you and me can end up dismembered in the tub, and it's like, oh. She's like, yeah, but good thing you're the type of person who wouldn't let that happen. He's like, yeah, good thing. So, obviously, this isn't her lane. This isn't her expertise. But she's telling Dan, right, the parts of you, there's a better version of you. There is better bits. It's not just all the parts of yourself that you think you know of. That doesn't have to completely and utterly define you. So, there are other parts to you. Let me be that person, because she's like, I see you. Which part of me was wondering, right, she sees weaknesses, so maybe there's some part of him going, the moment he stopped, I was like, is that what he's worried about? That those better parts of him are his weakness? Is that what he's worried about? And I love that line from Zoe. It's like, I may not be the partner you expected. I might not even be the partner you wanted. I might just be the partner you needed or slash need. So that's interesting. You know, obviously playing the role of the Dixons and stuff. So I think next is their meeting with Polovich. So all the while this is happening, you have everything with Emily and Harold. I love, because at first if I'm not mistaken, that's the first scene of the episode, isn't it? I think so. Maybe not. I don't remember. But either way, I just love that it's silent and she's like telling this allegory story, and then it's just like at the end of the story, it was just kind of like, because at the moment she's telling the story, I was like, wait, are we gonna find out? I was like, this ain't gonna be some roundabout way to be like, and the albatross got the wrong kid, and I feel like that joke could be interpreted two different ways, but I even love Harold be like, don't you think it's a little too soon to be telling dead kid jokes? And it's just like, legitimately how fucked up it is. I was almost like, because I was like, wait, what? This is what, and first the absurdity of it and just like the punchline of it, and I was like, wait, what? And because I was like, oh, I kind of was right, but him saying the line afterwards, isn't this too soon to be telling dead kid jokes, legitimately made me laugh. I was like, that's super fucked up, but it kind of made me laugh a little. And he's like, was that supposed to be funny? She's like, I mean, not ha-ha funny, but we haven't talked at all since the door closed. And he's like, all right, you want to talk? Let's face, like, you know, it's like, all right, let's get real. What should I call you? Emily is like, yo. He's like, yeah, I've already known for a little while. And so that's why he was saying, I figured that's why he was saying what he was saying to Waters last episode about like, right, that's the problem with children. You kind of let them into your heart and you're asking for it when they break your heart. Like, that's just kind of this kind of part of the deal. You can't really get too pissed off about it later on because that's kind of just part of the arrangement. So I just thought that was so fascinating. Conversation last episode because it implied like he knew. And so he does know. And so, I think that conversation ends up going down some interesting discussion routes. Because first and foremost, he's calling her a criminal. It's like, because she falsified who she is, like, you know, false identity and stuff like that, and got into the FBI like that. So it's like layers upon layers upon layers. Plus, she's been assisting a criminal, which I love that she's like, okay, I might be a criminal, but what about you? And he was almost like, what's that supposed to mean? So you didn't send an assassin after my dad? I was like, boom, she got you. She's like, probably not stupid, because the moment she probably talked to her dad about the assassin and stuff, it's like, oh, okay, she's probably like, yeah, you're the one. It had to be you. It could only be you. Because probably even Dan probably knew, like, oh, that was probably Harold. Harold trying to keep that secret. He probably knows that Harold went through their pseudo-father to get it done too, so either way, I love that. And it's like, ooh, she got you. You got her, but she got you. But I love that they had this interesting inverse of the conversation Emily had with Zoe. She said a name is just a name. But for Harold, it's like, no, a name is so important. A name, like, draws the line in the sand, shows where your flag stands, it shows what you stand for. And for him, the secret's getting exposed will threaten his name. His name is all his family has to remember him when it's all said and done. So it's like the choices you made have basically threatened all of that. The choices you and your dad have made. Because he was like, because for him, he's like, there are so many contingencies in place to make sure shit like this doesn't happen. Because when she was like, oh, I saw my dad recommended someone, I thought she was saying Harold, considering her circumstances, but she was talking about, I keep saying Boat, but I don't know if that's like how you properly pronounce it. I think the last name's like Bote. I want to say his first name's Michael, if I remember correctly. The dude that's essentially Harold and Dan's pseudo-father, which we'll talk about him later. But I thought that was such a fascinating discussion between the two, because it's like, right, you need to make a choice when we land. You know, Emily, Angela, what do I even call you at this point in time? It's like, you know, you have to choose, because that was the whole point about a name. It's like a name, like, a name keeps us from being so many different people. It solidifies who we are, who we want to be. We get to determine that when we choose, when we stake our flag in as our name, you know. And he wants Emily to choose between, like, the names, but for her, it's like, you both represent me. He's my father that raised me and gave birth to me. You raised me and gave me purpose. You're both two parts of me, and you're asking me to like cut off a part of myself and just of what? So you can trust me? It's like, no. I thought that was such an interesting back and forth between, but he was like, it's like, he's like, right, you come swinging at me, want to make me the villain? You're the one in the wrong here, but once again, he's done wrong too. So, because I think for her, it's like this, her dad simply asked her what she wanted to do, and this is what she wanted to do. And I think in the time, like, no one knew the consequences of what this would be, because no one knew. Everyone was hoping and praying that this would stay buried, that this would stay dead, that no one would come unearthing about it. Here is Faraz Hamzad, after all these years, steer the pot, and all the dominoes just keep falling. And, and no one saw them and expected them to fall. So that's why everyone's getting blindsided. There was also that line that really, I thought was so good, that, about the assassin thing. It's like, right, you sent an assassin after my dad. She's like, I found a way to be okay with that. But what's making me really hard to look at you is that when we were talking to Faraz's lawyer, what did you do? You dropped my mom's name, her real name, a name I have not heard since I was a little kid. Because understandable, with all this espionage, with all these secrets, her mom's real name can never be spoken, because it would undo so much. It brings so much to the surface. And what did you do? You spoke my mom's name, and it's because you had an inkling. You said it because you wanted to make sure that I would react. And so you did that. And for her, it's like, right, it's like, would you want me sharpening Chip's name and using that to stab you? It's like, she equating that same thing. And I was like, that was such a powerful conversation between both of them. I was like, oh, this is so good. It's so complicated, it's so layered, it's so awkward, and it's so intense. But then they end up landing. It's like, okay, so where are we? Then they end up in like an archive where it's like, okay, here's all these like flights and stuff, because Harold's the one who arranged the flight. So it's like, right, this is the piece of information that, because I don't even think Harold knows what it is, because Emily doesn't know what it is, because I guess it was a kept secret, but maybe Emily does know and she's just playing dumb, but like Dan and Abby must have played that super close to the vest and never even told like Harold what this is really all about, that this is about that deposit. And once again, maybe Dan's under the impression it's about that, but maybe in actuality it isn't. We'll have to wait and see, but seems like the more plausible thing than what I was thinking with the whole Emily thing. But once again, maybe there could be some connective tissue there. We'll have to wait and see, but Dan, Harold said this really interesting thing about like how he had to plan things, because he's like, right, typically when you're trying to get an asset out of like a hot situation, you put them on an agency plane. When things kind of go really, really wrong and you don't even want the agency to know, then you have to get creative. And she's like, whoa, what went wrong? He's like, wait, your dad never told you. It's like, well, your dad, you can be an operative or you can be a parent. Balancing both at the same time is not the easiest thing. And your dad always tried to be the person he believed. He always felt he could switch to be the person he needed to be whoever the situation called for. And so Harold gets all the information he needs about. He finds the flight. It's like, okay, and then he also like the names and the seats. At first, Emily was there. I thought she was going to... He's like, oh, I'm supposed to know their name from 30 years ago, the aliases. I thought Emily was going to say something because she would know, because she's heard the story. But maybe she does know their aliases. But either way, the lawyer hangs up and is like, yeah, the documents basically showing all your guilt, sadly, they will be released. So it's like, for Harold, he's like, fuck. This was a gamble, and he ended up losing because he didn't give Faraz... He didn't give him enough, like, the details he needed to prove his usefulness. So it's like, yeah, I don't know if you know, because once again, Harold probably doesn't know about the deposit and stuff. So, like, he doesn't have access to the information. I guess this was kind of proof of that. So, either way, Emily's like, right, we'll create the narrative. Yeah, you were an enemy from the past, came to kind of throw your name in the mud, and the government kind of tossed you aside, but then you ended up clearing your name, and the government welcomed you back with open arms. And he's like, what? She's like, that's the story we're going to tell when this is all said and done, after Faraz Hamzad is dead.
my dad is planning that, so I think we should go meet him, because he wanted a meeting with Dan. And it's like, yo, I didn't expect you guys to even, like, that's going to be interesting. Because technically these characters haven't been, in the confines of the show, these characters haven't been in the same scene together since episode 2, when they were, like, back in, like, the 80s. That was the last time they were together on screen, and that's going to be interesting to see these two in the same scene together. It's going to be interesting because it's like, right, there's the whole Dan and Zoe, and now this, but it's like, okay, so it's like Hamzad needs to die because that's how this stays buried, which is interesting because Michael ends up calling up, once again, I think his name, go Boat. Boat ends up calling up Waters, and it's like, right, you're the last person to see Harold. It's like, well, he's missing. Well, I'm putting together a little team. Then our attempted assassin ends up showing up, and it's like, okay, he sits down with him, and it's like, okay, so he's trying to understand, okay, did you send me into that situation knowing what it was? Did you know that Harold had a mole in his team, or was it that you didn't know? And he's like, didn't know? I put her there in the first place. It's like, wait, what? It's like, yeah, because my son asked me to. And it's like, wait, Dan chases your son? He's like, yeah, also Harold. More or less. More than less, as he kind of like breaks it down. But he's like, yeah, he's like, I did the one thing, like in this particular line of business, I did the one thing a father should never do. And he's like, it's like, yo, I think for him, it's like, you should never do a favor for family. It's kind of like the justification for that. But he's also saying, like, now I need your help doing something a father should never do or ask. And it's like, I need you to hurt my sons. Because for him, it's like something, yeah, once again, didn't know the dominoes were going to fall this way, but what he's done in the past, like, once again, everyone's dirty secrets are on the line. Dan's, Harold's, and Bolt's as well. So it's like, you know, and it's all right, your two sons are in danger of this happening. Now it's happening to you. And it's like, and it says both. And I'm assuming Emily's going to be that thing that would hurt them both because they both do love her. They're both a part of her. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see how that ultimately ends up playing out. I'm very, very excited to see where that, and I'm assuming Waters is going to be on the same team as him, and Waters probably isn't going to be aware of that's what that squad is for. Probably, he's at hurt, but I'm sure that's him kind of saying it in a very, it might not be to kill, but it might be to wound him. And once again, that might be an Emily, that might mean like going after Emily and Zoe, I don't know, or maybe they're like Harold's like grandson and wife. I don't know if that's where that's heading. Either way, then things are getting super spicy. Like I said, if I'm not mistaken, there's only 7 episodes, so there should only be 2 episodes left. But very, very interested to see where the next episode ends up taking us with all of this, because there's still so much in the past we haven't really covered, so I don't know if that's just going to be something to save for later. All the stuff going down in the present, because we don't spend as much time in the past as you would think we would, because it's like that section in the episode is like all there was. The rest is purely present day. So, like I said, it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.